Hi, I'm Don. Welcome to my studio.
Today I'll show you two ways of how to wet blend. We are going to wet blend blue skin and the red cloth.
That's good.
Mats and tools are all sponsored by the following brands. First, we dry brush the model. I like dry brushing these days, especially at the start of the model. It kinda jump starts the painting of the model. Especially for me, sometimes I have too many models to paint, and when I sit down in the studio or in front of my workbench, I kinda like procrastinate a bit and look at all the models, and it takes me a while to decide which models to paint. We're using two grays here. You could use the same like medium gray color. I just want to see the difference of these two gray paints. We're using cold gray on the base or the basing of this model. It's actually a warm gray. I don't know why it's named cold gray. After a couple of passes of dry brushing, you always need to do a couple at least, like a la Duncan Roads, because dry brushing is similar to like layering. If you do a couple of passes, you'll have a better coverage. It actually doesn't matter how you paint the base colors. We're just basically painting the base colors, especially of the Dracoline. But I really do prefer doing dry brushing because it's very relaxing, and like instead of like setting up my airbrush and stuff like that. So don't mind how I paint the base colors. It's important that you have a nice base color first. I highly recommend that you have a base color of the lighter color that you want to wet blend later, because if you don't have a base color, it's kinda confusing and difficult to blend and cover the model at the same time. Now we're going to do lazy glazing. I call it lazy glazing because we're just glazing all over the model, and we're just softening the dry brushing, because if this were fur, I would settle for the dry brushing, but I want a smoother skin for the Dracoline, so we're going to do a bit of glazing so that it smoothens and blends everything together. Basically, I personally find that dry brushing and then lazy glazing sometimes is the fastest, and maybe not the fastest, but it's the most relaxing because you're not really focused on meticulously painting base colors, which is not really important in my opinion. So for the base color, again, you could airbrush, you could paint it meticulously if you want, you could dry brush like what I do. The important thing is you have a nice base color so that it's easier to wet blend later. Also notice that I'm glazing more on the raised areas of the muscles, giving more volume and definition to the muscles of this model. So as you can see, just basic, very simple techniques of dry brushing and then lazy glazing, and you have a very nice definition of the muscles. Now let's wet blend. I'm just getting extra gray colors that I might need later, but we're just going to use the dark sea gray. So of course, we're going to use the retarder medium, and I choose to use the glass palette instead of the wet palette since we're retarding the drying time anyways. We're going to use our $100 highlight sauce because it has the perfect consistency. Now let's experiment. We're going to thin down the paints. Usually we need to thin down the paints with thinner medium or water, but this time we're thinning it with our highlight sauce. The idea of this experiment is to see if how long does the retarder medium like retard the drying time of the paint. However, we're just painting the darker color as another base color. Personally, I feel painting the base colors of the two colors you want to wet blend later is very important so that we're focused on the blending and not the covering of the model. This is the exact mistake that I made with my last wet blending video, thus I'm not sharing the link. So now, since we thin the paint with retarder medium, will, like the previous color, the darker color, reactivate once we paint the lighter color? And so far, it's not reactivating. The paint is dry and it's a fail. So now I'm getting like the darker paint over the model and then getting the lighter color or lighter paint over the model and blending them together at the middle. The lesson here is that once you mix the retarder medium with paints, it will only retard the drying time to about 1 to 2 minutes drying time instead of seconds. Now I hope you could see the importance of painting like a base color of the darker color and a base color of the lighter color and then just blending in the middle. You practically have two dry colors already and you're just mixing at the middle, much like how you mix on your wet palette. I hope it's clear so far, but let's do it again. So method 1 is to mix or thin the paints with retarder medium and water. And you like paint the other color on the other side and you paint the lighter color on the other side and you blend them together. So method 1 is very straightforward. However, it is important to note that you only have 1 to 2 minutes or maybe 5 minutes maximum working time once you mix the medium with the paints. I'm not really sure of the exact working time, but with this method, you only have like a small window to wet blend. Method 2 is more workable. You could wet blend longer. Basically, you paint the retarder medium over the model and then you paint on top of that. I kinda came up with this method since it's like painting with linseed oil. Imagine the retarder medium as your linseed oil and then once you need to blend the paints, you just get a bit of retarder medium. In oil painting, you get a bit of linseed oil or turpentine and you reactivate the paint and blend them together. Method 2 may look weird for you, but it's the best method for me so far because you have a longer window to do wet blending. Now let's simplify further and talk about the color wheel. So wet blending is basically just like mixing on your palette, wet palette or glass palette. You mix two colors together of the same spectrum and you just blend the middle part. You need to use the retarder medium though, because if you don't use the retarder medium, it feels like you have a deadline. Colors of the same area, like the same around like quarter of the color wheel, are the easiest to blend. Blending lighter and darker color of the same spectrum is so easy. It's like just manual airbrushing in a way, and the easiest is not always the best. The best colors to wet blend together is actually the least used combination. Most painters actually shy away from using complementary colors because complementary colors are like the exact opposite colors in the color wheel. However, much like mediums for acrylics, complementary colors are called complementary colors for a reason. Using complementary colors on one model or one miniature will really make your model pop. And also, if you mix them together, they will produce the best shading for each color. Some painters might tell you that wet blending does not give you the same control as glazing or glaze layering or glazes because you have more control with those techniques than wet blending. However, glaze layering or glaring and glazing with mediums are my go-to techniques, so I'm not really credible to say that you have less control with wet blending. So wet blending, if done properly, will give you really quick, nice results. And I feel if you have enough practice, you could actually do nice blends without the need for glazes. Basically, what I'm saying is that I need to do glazes because I'm not good with wet blending. And I wouldn't be surprised if we find like artists or painters that could wet blend like they're airbrushing, because we have master painters that paint with acrylics like they're watercolors. Now let's do a quick wet blending of the red cloth on the side of the model.
That's good.
It's important to note that we're using method 2 and we have lots of retarder medium on the side of the glass palette, and we're getting retarder medium once in a while so that we prolong the drying time of all these paints. Method 2 means you don't, like, it doesn't matter whatever you thin your paints with, like thinner medium or water, as long as you have a retarder medium on the side, and you only mix the retarder medium once you're ready to do blending. I feel this method has the longest working time since you have a fresh retarder medium, like mixing with the paint every time you need to prolong the drying time. As much as I want to call this method 2 like painting acrylics like oil paints, I don't want to get roasted at Facebook. Wet blending 3 colors including the highlight orange fire color should work, and I feel I'm just not experienced enough to pull it off. Now it's a matter of adding more shadows to the red cloth, like maybe purple shadows, and then glaring some orange highlights so that we really make that cloth pop, but we're not doing it for this video since it's glaring anyways. I hope though that you kinda really fully grasp the idea of wet blending and also using complementary colors, which is the best like combination of colors if you get the hang of using them. I hope you like the color wheel insert in this video, because as I know I promise I'll make a color wheel or color theory video, but it's like 4 semesters of college, so it's difficult to put in one video.
That's it, we're done. I hope you liked the video. Do like, comment, subscribe, and consider joining the channel so that you'll be part of our Discord community. Saludos!